So any questions about those four general, that's the four general points about karma. Any questions about those?
You mentioned something where I think it was the causes of negative karma, both past life experience and there's like the cooperative, there's another word you could use.
Oh, cooperative conditions.
Cooperative conditions. What are those?
So yeah, in general, the teaching on karma, what it says is that that the main, what's it say this? The main cause, when it says karma is certain and that positive actions lead to positive results, negative actions lead to negative results, what they say is that they use this metaphor. I'll say the metaphor and then I'll explain in real life what it means. But the metaphor they give is so if you have I remember once when I went to, many places have this, but I remember seeing it at Thomas Jefferson's house. He had this huge collection of seeds, right? Because he was a farmer, so he had and so the idea is that is a metaphor for karma, right? They usually use this metaphor of seeds. And so the idea is that when we create karma, it's metaphorically, it's like creating a seed. And the reason why they use that metaphor is they say if you keep those seeds for as long as you keep them, say, in a dry, cool place, like in a drawer somewhere, those seeds still exist and they have the potential, but they won't ripen at that time. But then if you put the seed in some soil and you water it and there's sunlight, and the moisture and the sunlight and the soil cause it to germinate, right? And then it produces a sprout and a plant and then a fruit. And so the metaphor there is that the karma itself is like the seed, but then there have to be cooperative conditions for that seed to ripen into an experience. And so the example would be let's say I created a very bad karma with someone, I really hurt them and harmed them. So I created a negative karma in relation to them that will cause me to suffer at some point. Now, if it just so happens that let's say I get transferred and I move to Indonesia or something, right? Well, I don't see that person for years and years. So during that intervening time, that seed is still there, like the seed in a drawer, but the cooperative conditions, so in other words, seeing that person and having the opportunity to interact doesn't arise, so that seed doesn't ripen. But it's still there as a potential. And the idea is that when I next come across that person, that would be the equivalent of the soil, and that then it becomes possible for that seed to ripen, and suddenly I have some very bad experience with them. So that's what it means. That's the idea there. And in the same way, somebody could have, the karma to have some other bad experience, and then you have to be. They sometimes also give examples where there's a group of people, actually it happens something, there's a group of people in a place when there's a hurricane or something, right? And so the hurricane is the cooperative condition, but then, some people have the hurricane come through and nothing really happens. They say, oh wow, that was an interesting experience, the sounds were pretty or something, where somebody else has horrible suffering. And the idea is that the external is the cooperative condition, but the cause is the seeds in one's own continuum or in one's own mind. So that's the idea there. Does that answer?
I think that makes sense, at least how I understand it, with at least interacting with other people. The last example though, I don't know if I understand that. That just sounds like being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Is that?
Well, I guess the idea there is that the idea there is that the Buddhist idea really would be why is one person at the wrong the idea in karma really is that is two. One is it's correct with the person, in other words, that's true. But part of the idea in karma is that why are we in the wrong place at the wrong time or something like that, and that part of that is our own karma. And I'll give it just a very simple they would say for example. I think it's I knew a situation once where a number of people were told, oh, this is a great investment idea, right? And they told a number of people that, right? And some people said, oh, I'm not interested, and walked away. Whereas some other people said, oh, wow, great. And they gave their investment, and then it was a ripoff, right? And it's they were all at the wrong place at the wrong time, but some got hooked in and some didn't. And the idea is that that's their karma, right? That would be the Buddhist teaching, is that one person had that karmic seed that allowed them to sort of get pulled into a bad situation. Others didn't, so they were in the same situation, but they didn't suffer. Some suffered and some didn't.
So it was just their own ignorance or lack of understanding just caused that
to happen for them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the idea there.
Okay.
general points of those four general points. I just want to check one other thing. Like, do you get the feeling that, like, so, because when we cover it in class, you know, we talk, I mean, we talk what are those 4 points. But when you're meditating, I was just trying to give the flavor. The idea is to actually relate it to your experience, right? So it's like if you're meditating on this, you don't just think, the Buddha said karma is certain, the Buddha said karma increases, the Buddha said, like, that's not meditation. You know, the idea of contemplative meditation is where you actually think, wow, like, I mean, I didn't want to go into, you know, but you might even think, like, wow, yesterday, like, when so-and-so screamed at me, you know, like, and I got mad at them, like, I thought they were being a jerk, right? But wait a second, like, how did I help set that up, right? And then you start to realize, like, you know, if you actually contemplate this point, you might go, oh, wow, I was the jerk. Wait a second, you know, like, they were screaming because I did something to hurt them or something, you know, I'd set it up. Or maybe 3 weeks earlier I had done something to set it up, whatever, you know, but, and I have this, and then you may analyze, you start to go, wow, I've had that kind of experience throughout my life quite a lot. Why is that? You know, and so you stop, the idea is that you stop blaming the other person and you start to take responsibility and analyze, what am I doing? You know, and that's the idea here, right, is that you relate it to your own experience and you ask the question, what have I been doing? Not what is somebody, and, you know, if you catch yourself when you think about karma saying, like, you know, wow, so-and-so has really bad karma, like, then you've gone astray, you know, you've lost the point, you know, because that's not what this teaching is about, right? This teaching is about each person has to analyze themselves, their own pattern of karma, their own behavior, their own thoughts, their own ways of interacting with the world around them, right? And so, so you look at your own experiences, you know, and you say, oh, wow, like, when that, you know, when I had this, you know, whatever, when something else bad happened, you know, you look at when good things happen and when bad things happen, and you compare it. You say, did I really recognize, you know, that I don't meet with a cause that I didn't create, that I don't meet with a situation where I didn't create this cause, or did I not really think that? Did I think, oh, this just happened for some random reason, you know, and that it had nothing to do with me, and you start to realize, oh wow, if I was thinking that, it's almost like, you know, then you have to say, okay, well, am I thinking that because I disagree with the Buddha? And if I do, okay, you know, that's okay. I'm not, you don't have to agree with, you know, it's up to you if you agree or not. But you have to at least check with yourself. And it's like debating. Sometimes I say, you know, like the monks do that debating in the courtyard. Actually, I'll just share this. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I'll just share it. Like, I was just up in New York last week, and I was really, one moment, it was very fun. I was with two Geshe, you know, Tashi, Geshe Tashi, and then Geshe Dardi. And I was having, one thing that made me very happy, we were sitting around, a group of us were sitting around debating, and they were taking the wrong, I noticed, oh wow, they intentionally took the wrong position, the position that's not correct. And they were like, okay, come on, let's debate it. And I'll take the wrong position. You know, and it was fun to watch because people were, you know, it was like, I was joking by the end. I said, wow, I'm starting to believe the wrong position now because they were a good debater, you know. But my point is that when you meditate, you should actually do it with yourself. Like you say, okay, so if I think it's all, you know, like if I think all my problems are because of my neighbor, you know, it's all their fault. And that hasn't anything to do with me, right? Well, I actually argue that case. Say, okay, is that true? Maybe that's, you know, maybe I disagree with the Buddha. The Buddha's saying it's my problem, right? But okay, I'm going to take, so if you're really meditating, you might sit there and say, okay, maybe it is all my neighbor's fault. Let me argue that case, right? And see if you see who, you know, like, debate it with yourself. You know, like, if there's a part of you that doesn't agree with the Buddha, fine. But then debate. You see what I mean? Really analyze it and like say, well, why do I think it's all my neighbor's fault? Are all problems in the world my neighbor's fault? Like, have all the problems since I was born been my neighbor's fault? You know, is it, and like, is there anything in the way I've related to that situation that's contributed or not? You know, and, you know, can they make my mind suffer? You know, how do they do that? Like, do they have some power that can make my mind suffer? What's the, you know, how does that happen? So you have to analyze, right? And if you, what the Buddha's saying is if you analyze with reason enough, you'll come to the right conclusion for yourself. Isn't it? The Buddha said, right, check my teachings. Don't just accept them because I said it. Anyway, so the point is like, even if you, I mean, you can debate that with yourself and really look at the parts of yourself that don't agree, that say, no, what I do doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want, especially if I'm not getting caught, doesn't matter. You know, like, and like, actually analyze that and say, where does that come from? You know what I mean? And check for yourself, because otherwise you don't change, right? Otherwise, if you leave some part of you that sort of like doesn't agree with the teaching, and you just leave it aside of your meditation, well then it'll stay there forever. Right? So you have to kind of look at those parts of yourself and just talk to them, you know, like metaphorically speaking, you know, talk to yourself. But that's part of analytical meditation. Does that make sense? As you sort of, you bring up all your own objections in a way, and then you look at them and you just sort of think it through. Because actually, if you don't really agree, then you're not going to change your behavior. Actually, right? You're not going to change how you act. If you don't agree with the Buddha, then and if you're too polite, then you just won't ever say it, right? You wouldn't tell the Buddha you don't agree, but you don't agree. So, but that's not what the Buddha asked you to do, right? The Buddha said, check. Look at your own experience. Look at use reason, use experience. Look at how you interact. Look at what actually leads you to happiness, doesn't lead you to happiness, right? And so you can check. Okay, so like when I become enraged, like for example, or angry, does it ever make me happy? If I'm prideful and arrogant, does that really lead to good relationships or not? Like, whatever. I mean, I'm just giving all different examples, right? You have to check for yourself and actually analyze it, and then come back to the actual words of the teaching, right? So the Buddha said karma is certain. I think that if I, whatever. Like sometimes I think, if I lie, I'll be happier. The person won't know, right? The Buddha said if I lie, I'll be unhappy, which is true, right? And you have to compare the two. You see what I'm getting at? Until you come to some conclusion that changes your, and if you don't come to a conclusion that changes your perspective, well then you're not, I don't know, then you're just there's a saying in Tibet, I think something like then it's like walking through the temple like as if it's a museum looking at all the pictures. Oh, that's pretty, but it doesn't do anything, you know what I mean? So they're saying meditation shouldn't be like that, it should be like some kind of a deeper, checking for yourself, right? And coming to some kind of definitive insight, at least for that session. Maybe there may be many points that we have to have insights about, but at least for whatever the topic is you're thinking about, to try to sort of push through to some new understanding for yourself. Did you have a comment? Question?
So on the 4 points, just like the death is certain, time of death is not certain. So with karma is certain, definite. Even small karmas matter. What is the third?
Oh, sorry. The first one is karma is certain, or definite. Second one is karma increases.
Karma increases.
The third one is you don't meet with an effect if you didn't create the cause. Okay. And the fourth one is it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't go away because of time. Because sometimes people have that wrong view. Like actually people do that, right? Somebody says, well, nothing happened, I don't know, I did it a while ago and nobody noticed, I guess I'm okay. And what this is saying, what karma is saying is And as long as you saw yourself do the action, if nobody else saw it, I guess they would say the Buddha saw it in some way, but that's not what matters actually. What matters is you saw it. The Buddha's not punishing anybody actually. The Buddha only has compassion. But what you recognize is even if I only saw myself do something negative, I saw it, so it's in my conscience. And that seed is in my consciousness of having seen myself do it. And therefore that, using a metaphor that Rinpoche uses metaphor, you say, so therefore it follows you. Whatever you know about yourself follows you wherever you can't escape. You can't get away from what you know about yourself, actually. Yeah. So that's the fourth point, is karma doesn't just disappear. Even into future lives, it follows you, is the idea. Yeah. And someday, when the cooperative conditions arise, it will ripen. All right, well, let's do the second. The next one is where I said we're going to pick an example, right? So remember there's this teaching on the 10 non-virtues, right? So we went through those, killing. 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. And you could do this contemplation with any of those, right? We should go. Actually, we go through each of the 10 non-virtues. So again, the point is I just want to remind you, right? The point is not not to just say, oh, the Buddha said, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, right? And again, you don't have to agree with the Buddha, but the idea is you're contemplating what the Buddha taught and checking, comparing it to your experience.